Welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 177th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 632nd episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, July 9th, 2020. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms. And let's start this week, this edition, how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Well, in a week that was short on news, particularly of the good variety, it feels like the only way to go here is with Christian Lander arriving on campus. He posted something on Twitter that he had arrived on July 5th, and shortly thereafter, on the 8th, the picture was posted of him and Cliff Marshall in the weight room wearing masks and ready to go. As everybody is looking forward to Christian's time in Bloomington, one of the big areas of focus or at least discussion has been his physical readiness to be able to play in the Big Ten and the rigors of that. So seeing him immediately get to work with Coach Marshall is a good thing. Although I will admit that he looked like he was a little more defined physically maybe than we might have expected. So I think that's a good sign, and excited to see him in Bloomington. Really the last piece of the recruiting class to get there, and again, everybody proceeding as if everything will go well and we'll be able to have basketball at some point over the course of the season. But good to have him there. Good to see him wearing a mask, and good to see him already working with the strength team there, and looking forward to seeing him on the court. With that, let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show.
He remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind this week?
Well, Andy, I'm going to piggyback on your banner moment about Christian Lander. I guarantee that the guys in the basketball program are glad to be back. I know that this week and today there's a lot of news, but I'm going to focus on what I think is the positive. I was fortunate enough to get back in the gym yesterday with our high school guys, and it was basketball as you know it with protocols. I mean, it was a little weird the way it was, but everyone was excited about being in the gym. So to the Indiana fans out there, I guarantee Christian Lander and Trayce Jackson-Davis, who we're going to talk about tonight, and all of the other guys are back and working in the weight room, and they're in a process again that they're used to. And there was a lot of joy in our gymnasium, and I'm sure there's a lot of joy in the Indiana locker room as they can be now with all the protocols of getting back to work. Because basketball players, yes, they're college students, and academics are part of it, but they're basketball players, and this is what they like to do. And having the ability to get back is important for the basketball season. It's also important for the young men and for the coaches. Coaches like to coach their players, and so getting everyone back on campus is a big thing at this point, especially in the situation with the pandemic that we all have to deal with. But let's hope that they're gaining strength, gaining some team chemistry, and moving forward. And I shared this in our community. I shared this on Twitter. I stole this from somebody. It's not my own credit, but win the wait. This is typically the off season, and so let's approach it as talking about Indiana basketball, getting excited about Indiana basketball, and having a belief that Indiana basketball will be back. We just don't know when. Hopefully it's on time. Maybe it's January. Maybe it's even later than that. But Indiana basketball will be back, and this community and this group and these shows will keep us all together and kind of keep us moving forward while we get some bad news here and there. But it is Indiana basketball. It is the off-season. We're going to have fun talking Trayce Jackson-Davis tonight and what he did as a freshman and what he's going to do as a sophomore. So win the wait and try to find some level of patience. But Indiana's back at work, and I think that's a good thing.
Coach, I like the optimism. Save a little bit. We're probably going to need it for some other segments of things we got to talk about tonight. So sprinkle
That's
it
all
in
I got.
Sprinkle it in as needed as we go. And to my right, he is the man who recently petitioned the Board of Trustees to institute an official shot doctor position within the basketball program that is independent from the head coach, reports directly to the statue of Herman B. Wells, and includes private jet travel to and from San Diego. And he wants to be hired for it, of course.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the answers.
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant on the last week in IU basketball?
Well, I think we all know what news I'm really excited about, and it's that the Maui Invitational is still planning to happen at this late date. So those reservations are still not wasted for me. But no, I mean, obviously that could change next week given the
You do have a certain Castaway vibe to your look right now, which may be concerning for your trip to Maui, but that's neither here nor there.
What do you think I'm going for? I'm just going to find a volleyball and put a face on it at some point, and that will be my traveling campaign. So yeah, I mean, they're full steam ahead with that, and who knows, that could change next week. We don't know, but it was finally some good news that somebody is planning to do something that is maybe a little bit outside the norm. Right now it seems like everybody's shutting down, and we'll talk about this, but there's no non-conference in the Big Ten for football this year and for fall sports, all the fall sports. So the fact that somebody is optimistic, and given the situation in Hawaii right now, there's a reason to be optimistic. So that made me happy. And then of course, seeing, as you guys mentioned, Christian Lander on campus working out, and then all his teammates reacting to the fact that he's there. Awesome. Just great to see. So I just think that there are some positives in a week that hasn't had a lot of them. There are some things that stood out. IU may still go to Maui, and Christian Lander's on campus working out, getting ready to play.
All right. Well, here's what we're going to talk about this week. We do have some Big Ten specific and college hoops headlines that we'll spend the majority of this first segment talking about. Player preview series continues and kind of concludes, at least for the returnees, with Trayce Jackson-Davis tonight. And then we'll hit your questions in our final segment, as we always do. All of that coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. And before we get to that, a few quick announcements. Please continue to support our friends at Home Field. You can go to homefieldapparel.com and use the code Assembly20 to get 20% off your purchase. Exciting news from our friends at Home Field today. They rolled out a subscription service as they get ready to launch. I think it's at least 15 new schools over the next 15 Saturdays. So they've rolled out a subscription plan where you can sign up, and I think it's $20 a shirt. You'll get a design from each of the schools they do. There's also an every other week option. I've not yet mentioned this to my wife. I suggest many of you do the same, but a cool service to sign up for. I think they've got a lot of big things planned. Sounds like they've got a lot of Power 5 schools, and you can even go on and write down schools that you do not want to receive, which for me would probably be anybody in the Big Ten that's not IU, and otherwise I could probably make my peace with most others outside of Kentucky or something like that. But anyway, so go check out what they've got going on at homefieldapparel.com. So with that, guys, the big headline came out today was that the Big Ten, Ryan, as you mentioned, canceled all fall non-conference games. Came out only the Ivy League came out earlier, and that was really that they're canceling all sports until 2020 or until 2021, rather. But the Big Ten came out and talked about that. The Kevin Warren, the commissioner, was on the Big Ten Network. I thought did a good interview with Mike Hall and talk through some of their rationale for why they wanted to release it now, and just their general thought process on why they're doing it. A lot of it is scheduling and being able to control a lot of the protocols by introducing other schools that you're playing. The thought is you're introducing whatever things they do or do not have into your league. So they think that by limiting it to the Big Ten, potentially expanding the schedule to about 10 conference games is what it sounded like the proposal would be. That gives them some schedule flexibility and allows them to probably push things a little bit down the road as they go through and try to figure that out operationally and how they would do that. So, Ryan, I'll throw it to you first. I mean, I think there have been rumblings of this, so I don't know that it's fair to ask whether it was a surprise. I guess maybe the better question is what your reaction was to it. Is it a feasible plan to potentially save the season, or is it just the gradual chipping away of things until eventually there's nothing left?
Well, here's the problem. In a vacuum of NCAA leadership, which there has not been much NCAA leadership on this, there really hasn't. If you go back to when this first happened, the conferences themselves were the ones who decided to shut down conference tournaments. The NCAA did not. Now, they were consulting with the NCAA. In this respect, the NCAA has not put in protocols specific to each team and say, they've given guidelines, but they haven't said you need to do this. This is what everybody has to do. Each conference has done that separately. And in some cases, each school has done it, has enforced it even harsher protocols than the conferences are suggesting. The problem comes when two teams are facing each other from other conferences. Let's say Indiana has to travel somewhere and they go on campus. And this is for any sport, not just football, which football is the big one everyone's concerned about. But let's say they go to, Ball State, and now they go to a campus that doesn't have the same protocols as their campus. It's maybe they don't feel they feel it's not as safe. Maybe they feel like if Ball State goes to Indiana, Ball State, isn't used to the Indiana protocols and doesn't follow them as closely. It creates this situation where each conference has their own protocols. Well, now you're mingling those conferences and maybe people aren't following them. And maybe one conference that is far more stringent feels like the other conference isn't living up to its end of the bargain and is risking the health of the student athletes. That's the reason for this. Now, they may, as you said, they may increase the number of games in conference. They may have teams playing each other twice. I mean, this is going to be a weird season. We may see that. I mean, there's a chance that, out in the Pac-12, which is, I was texting with sources today or saying the Pac-12 is going to be next in this. The ACC is likely to follow. I mean, this is a domino thing and this is going to happen. There may be a chance that teams like Florida and Florida State will wind up continuing to play if those protocols line up, because it's not traveling. It's not a big distance. They can take a bus to the game. So some rivalry games may be kept. But in general, it looks like they're going only conference games. And the reason why is the confusion and the fact that the NCAA didn't come out and say, these are the protocols. This is what you have to follow. Everybody has to do it, regardless of your conference, regardless of your school, regardless of logistics. You have to follow these steps. If you want to be more stringent than that, that's fine. But these are the rules. Here they are. They've left that up to the conferences, and now the conferences don't feel safe mingling. So it's understandable. It's not just about travel. It's about the mingling of the conferences.
Yeah, and so much of the financial pieces of this underscore it really on all sides. People want to play because of the financial impact of being able to have games, have them on TV, and those kinds of things. The flip side of that is the finances for these smaller schools are at risk for a number of reasons.
It's terrible.
One is they lose out on the money on these buy games. That's a big one that really is a huge hit to most of these athletic departments. And then the other part of that is when you talk about following protocols. I mean, the frequency of testing and some of the things that these schools can afford to do and what the cost of those things are is already burdensome and may already lead to them not being able to if the Big Ten sets a standard that's at one area, it may not be feasible for some of these smaller schools from a financial standpoint to be able to even meet those. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at a certain point.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that you're right about those mid-major conferences. And now a lot of these contracts with schools say that if you cancel the game, those bigger schools still have to pay, but it's a fraction of what they would pay. So it's a couple $100,000 is opposed to something like 1.5 million. I mean, so they do get money, but it's going to be much less. And I think, frankly, this is going to end up in court in some way, shape, or form, because those small conferences are going to take this to court and say, hey, it wasn't our idea to cancel that game. You canceled on us. That it's going to, so, I mean, maybe they can come to a happy medium of finances, or maybe they can ask the government, frankly, for a bailout and be able to pay some of these schools to keep their athletic department. Because let's face it, if athletic departments start collapsing, not only is that bad just for the university and for all those things about, athletic pride and all that stuff, it's a lot of scholarships going away that could help people who otherwise might not go to college. And so you're talking about losing opportunities for kids to go to college if scholarships start disappearing. So there is a practical and real world effect of this, of all of these athletic departments collapsing, is, and cutting sports and things of that nature. A lot of kids are missing out on an opportunity for an education, and that's real life stuff. So, I mean, you saw Stanford this week cut 11 sports. Stanford is known for producing high quality individuals and high quality athletes, particularly in the Olympic sports. The fact that they just cut 11 sports is a big deal. And it's a sign that that's going to happen elsewhere too, big time.
So then, Coach, kind of, the next question that inevitably comes up is what, if anything, does that mean for basketball? It's obviously early to make any determination about that, but as you start to try to read the tea leaves, and if the conference is already not comfortable with that, the commissioner even went so far as to say today, it's obviously sitting in the back of everybody's mind, like there may be no football this fall, but he came out and did say that. What do you think this means, if anything, as we look ahead to what we hope is a basketball season?
Well, I think it's all about time and what's the appropriate time to get started again. This thing was shut down to a total zero, and to expect it to really come back 100% the way it was in previous years, I think always to me was a little bit of a dream. This is, at least in my opinion, a serious health issue. I know there's some disagreement out there whether it is serious or not, but these leagues aren't going to cancel and lose money if they're not getting information that they are interpreting as being serious. So I think the first decision is the fall, and then Archie and the staff has to operate as there will be a basketball season, because you can't operate with the idea that you're not going to have a season and then not get your players ready and those things, because if you don't do that and November comes, you're behind the eight ball and then it looks bad. So I think it's all about time. I don't know that any of us – I'm not in the meeting. Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, is a very impressive person. I saw his press conference at the Big Ten tournament when they canceled, and he talked about student athletes and the health of student athletes. And if he's wrong, he still has the student athletes in mind. If he's correct, he has the student athletes in mind. I appreciate Kevin Warren. He made a real tough decision to be the first one out to do this, and is catching some grief. But I think basketball season has a chance. Football, when you're playing 11, you got 85 guys on a team, scholarship on a team, a lot more than that. The protocols are different. Although this delay is also all the other sports as well, I think basketball has a chance of being played. I wouldn't say starting in November, maybe push back to January, and maybe a conference games only in basketball. But they're gonna play sports if there's at all any possibility of it being safe in order to make some money. So I am going to remain optimistic. This thing has worn me down being a sports fan, and it's tiring. Every day, new news, and then the excitement of getting back in the gym yesterday, followed by a bunch of news yesterday and today about sports shutting down, and Thomas Bryant now has COVID, and it's been a negative wash of news. But Indiana basketball, college sports will be back. It's just a matter of timing and what's best.
Yeah, and what I will say is, just knowing the people I know just from working in this business, professional sports are going to happen. College sports, I'm not as convinced. I think the NFL is going to plow through no matter what, because of how much money is at stake there. Fans are not. There's so many ad deals and whatever. They're going to plow through and play. If guys get it, they're just going to treat it like they're on the disabled list, and just plow through and try and get you to ignore, that thing. There's going to be a lot of taxi squad guys playing and all that. Baseball is too far along now. Baseball is going to be played. The NBA, the guys are already in the bubble. Guys are going to get it. It's going to happen. They're going to swap guys out. They're going to finish the season. I am not convinced that college sports are going to be willing to put kids in harm's way at the end, particularly because, let's face it, if you're not allowing kids to opt out, and if you don't make kids sign a waiver that says, I know what risks are here if I play, that may be what it comes to. There's a lot of money at stake in college football, but it's whether the university presidents have the stomach for putting kids at risk, really, in the end. And in some schools, they might. In some schools, you could see a thing where an entire conference goes back and one school just opts out. You could absolutely see that in the fall. So we'll see. I think that professional sports are too far along. They will happen no matter what. But I've yet to see anything that convinces me that college sports will happen.
Ryan, do you think too that if it's a money decision to play college sports, that pushes then the amateurism argument that
Absolutely.
You're not doing what's best for student athletes, that they're really pro athletes just playing at the college level? So you have that to consider too on the college landscape. That if it's about money,
they lose any high ground they had if they play this year, for sure. And I think that somebody mentioned this in the chat. I think it's a great point. I think it might have been Ari in the chat mentioned it. This is going to change the landscape of college sports forever because you're having athletic departments cut down and rely so much on just the money sports for prestige now because they're cutting sports out. I think that a lot of those sports that get cut will come back at some of those schools as they build up a war chest of money. But for now, those athletes that play football, play basketball, whatever, have enormous power at those universities. And you've seen some of them start to use it for social justice issues and things like that. I think you're going to start to use they're starting to realize how much power they have. And very shortly, you're going to see them using other things, using it for other things, using it to say, you saw UCLA's football team say, we want an independent medical personnel at every practice and workout because we don't trust that the school is going to take care of us. We're not playing unless we have that. That was a huge first step for other schools doing similar things. And then once you're doing that, then you can take the step to say, well, we're not playing unless we get, name, image, and likeness rights and whatever.
All right, well, we'll put a pin in that for now. I'm sure more to come, and every week we'll have a new development for us to hit on that. So we'll break here, and so coming up, we're going to look ahead to Trayce Jackson-Davis's second and perhaps final season in Bloomington. Delivered one of the best seasons ever for a freshman big man last year. So what's in store for the encore? We'll discuss that next. Stick with us.
Here's some reality from the high school level. There's a school here in Indiana that we opened up on Monday, has already shut down.
Who was it?
A player got
Fishers.
Fishers. I saw the headline. I forgot.
I know some basketball programs. Even kids have to self-check. The 7 symptoms doesn't mean they have COVID. But schools are operating if you have a cough or you have a headache, you can't come in for practice.
Which you shouldn't be able to. If you have any of those symptoms, they should be telling
you. And I know that there was another school that had some guy was working at a restaurant where there was a positive worker with the COVID, and so then that contact tracing. And so there were several kids in a local high school who couldn't come to the first week of because they had to quarantine for 10 weeks. And so there's so many. The thing I will tell people, too, is I know that we live in a world where we don't believe the experts, and we believe sitting in my man cave, I have all the answers because of the Google machine. But these people want sports. They don't want to find a reason not to have sports. And if they are canceling sports, then there is something there that is getting them to this decision. And it's not easy. It's not an easy decision to make. It's not an easy decision to follow. If you have to quarantine 7 basketball guys for 14 days in the middle of a season, what's that look like? I mean, it is much more complicated than we just want sports to play and want to watch it on TV and go tailgate, so why not have it? It's a lot more complicated than that.
No, yeah, that's what stood out to me from listening to Kevin Warren on that. I was going to jump in, but I was trying not to
go ahead.
Make the first segment go 28 minutes. But, yeah, I mean, he made it really clear multiple times throughout that, Coach, like you said, of his job is to keep the best interest of the student athletes in place, and that they've got medical people that they've put in place that they're going to listen to and they're going to trust, and he's going to go off of that. So, I mean, when you look at it that way, it's easy to get pessimistic about what the future of that might look like, because more than likely, the tone of most medical experts is the same, and if they're really going to follow that, and but to your point, in his position, he absolutely wants, the Big Ten stands to lose a lot. I mean, regardless of whatever's happened with these bye games and whatever, I mean, some of those games are costing them money. If you got to shut down more of the season, so they have a lot to lose. There's nothing that they want more than to be able to have the sports, but he's in a position where, again, you kind of talked about the high ground. I mean, for now, he's able to maintain that in a lot of ways, and saying, hey, workouts are going to be voluntary and we're going to honor scholarships and do all those kinds of things. So I think he's kind of having to do that at this point. It's just a matter of when, like I said, I view it as you've got this big thing and you're kind of chipping pieces away, and now you're not going to work out as soon, and now you're getting rid of these non-conference games, and eventually you're going to chip away enough so that there's nothing left. But you got to do it gradually and figure out how you're going to at least attempt to make it work.
Yeah, let me just, to our listeners out there, I know there's a lot of stuff on the internet, there's a lot of stuff on Twitter, and I've heard from segments of the Twitter world, even from other sports people on the, oh, you just don't, you want the virus to win, you don't want there to be sports. If anybody thinks that a sports writer doesn't want sports, they're a lunatic. Okay, our business is getting decimated by this. I want sports yesterday. But I also know if you start sports and shut them down because this is so bad, then everybody's going to lose their jobs. Like, you know, I mean, it's like I want them started as soon as possible safely so that we don't get halfway through a year and lose the ad deals that my website has for those. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many people that I am friends with who have lost their jobs in this because there's no sports. I want sports immediately. I'm worried about, you know, my family and, you know, all those things. I want sports now. But the problem is that I also, again, we know that if people aren't responsible with this, then everything goes away. I mean, so many websites will shut down. So many newspapers will have to, you know, lay people off. I mean, this business is getting decimated by this. So if you see a reporter report something that might be a little negative feeling, understand those people that are reporting those things want this to be over as much as anybody. So they're just being honest with you. So I would just say that if you see that stuff out there, ignore it, because there is nobody who wants sports more than me and more than my colleagues and more than everybody else in this business. We are sick of having nothing to. I'm sick of writing pop culture columns. I want to write about sports. I'm sick of writing about the news. I want to write about sports. You know, I mean, we've had to go other directions to do this. It is not fun. And you'll see people out there trying to capitalize on this and saying things that, oh, you know, these people they don't care if sports come back, and they don't care, you know, what this is, that is. That is so wrong, and it's offensive to me. So I'm just letting everybody out there know the mood in my business right now is, please, good Lord, get sports back. We need it so badly. And we just want everyone to do it. We just want everybody to do it safely so we don't have to do this again.
That's your profession, and you're absolutely right. And then the rest of us who are fans that are also concerned about health, we're not wanting sports to shut down.
Of course not.
I just got a text from my friend. He said, I just canceled our hotel for October 3rd. October 3rd was Wisconsin versus Notre Dame at Lambeau Field.
Yep, I have a bunch
of
friends
who are going to that. As a college football fan, we had tickets to that. We had a hotel in Green Bay, going to just celebrate all night long. I had, I have tickets.
If I had the cheese curd drop, this would have been the perfect time to play it, but I don't have that.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I want to go to Maui. I've got tickets. You know, I've got plane tickets, and I love going.
I want my sanity back, but I also understand that it's when, for me, again, I go back to, and I'll beat this into the ground. I'm telling myself, win the wait. If we have to wait until 6 months or wait a year or whatever, and everyone's going to be okay and we can take care of each other, it's going to suck, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. So just everybody out there, trust me, everybody in my business wants sports as badly as you are, and they want this to go away as badly as you do. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of sitting around and having no sports on my television. I mean, I've gotten into watching. I grew up when I was like in 6th grade. I wanted to be a race car driver. I have not paid attention to NASCAR since. I'm watching NASCAR like a madman.
I'm tired of the guy I have in most of my DFS golf lineups going +7 on a Thursday. So my DFS lineups are all gone by the time the whole weekend starts.
Yeah,
I want some baskets and some touchdowns.
I'm watching European soccer like a madman. Like it's just who we are. We want this to happen as much as anybody else. So if you're out there and you're frustrated, trust me, I am with you. I am 10 times as frustrated. I want my sports back, and I'll do anything, to get it back. It's just we want it to happen. I want there to be a regular football season too. I mean, USC's playing Alabama and Notre Dame this year. You think I don't want to watch those games? I mean, we get crushed by Alabama, but it might be fun, and our coach might get fired, and we might get better. Watching the USC Notre Dame game, something my dad and I do every year, and it's like I don't want to not watch that, but it looks like it's going away. But we're gonna have to deal with it. And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing I'll say is that if you're upset that the Big Ten canceled these games, and the other by the way, other conferences are all going to do it too. I am almost certain that, you know what, if that's what it takes to get a season, be happy about it, and be happy they did it now so they can start game planning for it, changing the schedule around and doing whatever they need to do. If that's what gets us a college football season and, all the other fall sports, I mean, there are kids that really dedicate their lives to this stuff. If that's what gets us those fall sports, this was a good day. As long as more bad news doesn't come behind it, which we don't know. But if that's what the formula is that makes them feel comfortable about having a season, that's a good thing.
Sports have been on the front of this ever since March. I mean, the country didn't take it seriously to the NBA and the NCAA
Rudy
started
Gobert,
shutting things
man.
down. So again, I just, I'm hoping for the best, but expecting some different cancellations down the stretch. And when sports occur, I'll be happy they're back. And it's been a tough week for sports fans and in your profession. And then I will also tell people this is, as a teacher and as an educator, and Andy's wife's an educator too. We're being briefed by the schools, and the concern of schools is kids, obviously, but it's also teachers, because if teachers have to sit out for 14 days or heaven forbid have a longer term episode with this, they're harder to replace. And our subs are generally older in nature. We've lost a lot of substitutes who don't want to come in because they're older. And so the thought was the school will likely shut down more for teacher COVID than student COVID. They're planning for that as well. So, it's past. I don't quite understand all of the information, and just because I read an article here or there or watch a news program, I'm not going to act like I know what's right and what's wrong. But a lot of people are taking this serious, and I don't think we'd have the announcement today if it wasn't at least thought to be serious by some people in charge.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the schools, and then we'll talk Trayce Jackson-Davis, seamless transition to that. But, the school, my wife's school, I was telling you, Coach, before we got on, I mean, they have trouble under normal circumstances getting subs. And what they end up doing is saying, I'll split, she's with 3 other teachers. So if there's, they'll each take an extra 8 kids. Well, how are you going to do that? You're just introducing that where you're trying to at least keep the kids separate and doing all that. I mean, let alone what to do when, you're trying to get kids to wear masks and all the little logistical, operational things that it's easy to say, like, we want kids back in school. Everybody wants. It's no different. Like, my wife wants to see her kids back at school. She hated the way that the last year had to finish, but she tried to adapt and do as best she could and not give up like some people would say teachers did, which is a complete load of crap. But
garbage.
You just, you're trying to do all those things. Like, nobody wants to be able to be in the classroom and teach that way because that's more effective, and be able to eventually get to a point where you can give kids a hug. And how do you console a kid who gets hurt, or where normally you can go up and put your arm around them? Can you go do that? What do you do? Who's supplying what? How are you going to clean classrooms and all those kinds of things? Whose responsibility is that? It's not. And the same with sports. I mean, they're talking about all these NFL protocols, and then imagine that in college where you don't have the same ability to put people in a bubble like that. It's easy to say that. You just got to figure out how to make all the little things happen to actually make it a reality. And I think that's
the thing. The bubble is the key. I think I can fit maybe 14 people 6 feet apart. Not even that in my classroom. I have class sizes of 25 to 30. I can fit at 3 feet distance in my classroom about 22, and I have 25 to 30. So it's those are issues that a lot of people you might not. It's not so easy. It's just saying open up schools. Okay, we'll open up, but
All right.
Anyway, let's talk some basketball.
Let's talk some basketball.
Yeah, let's angle this conversation and the chat and everything. Let's talk basketball. We got a good one today. This is a good one.
So I'll just kind of do. Obviously, we don't need to get through these stats, but like I said, I was sitting on a call and was able to at least get some of them. So I think we can highlight some of those as we go.
Clearly, really paying attention, right?
I'll kind of lead with some. I'll lead with some general stuff, and then we can get into specific things that we want to see him work on and go from there. All right.
Hi, this is AJ Moye. What's the only thing better than upsetting Duke in the Sweet 16? celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach for the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers!
All right, thank you, AJ, and welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcast or watch those replays and see all the between-segment banter, like the 10 to 15 minutes we just spent talking about other things, then check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and tonight we're going to circle back to on-court basketball and talk Trayce Jackson-Davis. I think as we maybe save the best for last, I don't know if this was intentional on our part or not, but as we've gone through our player preview series, we looked up this week, and Trayce is the only returnee left. So wanted to talk about him. I mean, as a freshman, really successful season, 13.7 points, 8.4 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks per game. Had 12 double-doubles, 6 20-point scoring games. I think by all accounts, everybody had high expectations for him coming into his freshman season, but I think he really exceeded those for us as we went in. I know Jared mentioned that a lot over the course of last season. So, Coach, I'll start with you. What part of his game was most impressive to you as a freshman?
You know, I thought I was really impressed with his motor and his ability to go hard to the basket. You know, obviously, we'll talk about improvements later, but I thought he had the ability to score in the post. He had the ability to get out on the break. He had the ability to get the ball and drive a little bit in a little pinch post action or a little screen and roll action. Was really impressed with his rebounding. Everyone's free throw shooting can get better, but I wasn't disappointed with his free throw shooting. What was it, high 60s, I believe?
I think it was mid 60s. I want to say like 65. No,
68.5%.
Yeah, 68.5 for a postman. That'd get better. But, you know, seeing the double-doubles that he had, the ability to rebound. A lot of times young kids come in and they're talented in high school. They can score. But do you have that motor to go get rebounds? And I think there's a lot of juice left to squeeze out of Trayce Jackson. Obviously, it's a pretty obvious statement there. But his motor, and I never thought he hit a freshman wall like sometimes happens. He might have had a few games where he struggled, but he bounced back real quick. And that is a skill as well. Do you get better within the season? Do you get better from game to game? Are you able to shut down your slumps quicker? The skilled, if you're really skilled at that, you can be consistent. And to score 13.7 points a game and over 8 rebounds a game, I think as a freshman is just incredible. And as he adds to his game, the areas that he needs to improve, you're going to see a relatively dominant player at the 4 and the 5 for Indiana.
Yeah,
Ryan,
sorry.
go ahead.
What impressed me the most about Trayce was his attitude. You would see in games where things would not be going his way, or he wouldn't get a foul call or something, and the next time down he would demand the ball, go right at the hoop, go right at the guy who maybe scored on him on the other end, and go right back over him. I love that personality of player. You saw it a little bit out of Race Thompson too. When people would challenge him, he'd want to go right back down and do something, or defensively, he'd want to step up and do something. I think the other thing about Trayce is just his defensive ability on the weak side. I mean, the dude blocks shots like crazy, and he had a couple games this year where he had 4 block shots, and like a handful of games where he had that many block shots. He altered shots all season. He was focused defensively. He had his breakdowns like any freshman, but for the most part, that dude was great defensively. Another thing worth noting, I mean, there were a couple games where he struggled to finish in the post, a handful of games, but in general, he was great at finishing around the rim. I think he wound up, despite a few games where he really struggled, he wound up shooting 56.6% from 2. And that includes some long jumpers that he took. So he's a guy who scores around the rim, and he plays really well around the rim. Now you got to work on, stretching him out a little bit, because I know he wants to make it to that next level. He's going to have to hit a jump shot if he moves out. But I thought everything from his screen and roll defense to his screen and roll offense to his ability to just attack the rim like crazy, to own the boards. I mean, he's a freshman in the Big Ten, to just dominate the boards in a game. You saw him do that several times. He's just a kid who lived up to every expectation, as you said, and surpassed it. I think that given the situation on the team last year, where Indiana was a little bit lower scoring team, the fact that he averaged more than 13 points a game was impressive. But, you look at it, he had games with 16 rebounds, 15, 14, 14, 13, 12, 10. He had 17 in one game. I mean, that's a guy who is doing better than a freshman should in the Big Ten. And I think that we noted that a lot last year, is there was something special going on here with the way he is in the post, especially being 6'9". He's not a 7-footer. He's not an enormous guy with outsized athleticism. He's a great athlete who is undersized for a pure center and was playing a lot of pure center last year and still was able to dominate the league the way he did. So yeah, I would just say that I think he's one of those guys who's very special, and Indiana's lucky to have him coming back for another year.
Yeah, and really when you look from a numbers perspective, a lot of the efficiency numbers really are strong. Overall, 119.8 offensive rating, which was 89th nationally for a guy who used a decent amount of possessions. That dropped off as you got into conference play, and then again in the Tier A and B competition as Ken Pom defines it. But I think there's a couple areas offensively that you look at and feel really good about. One is his ability to get to the free throw line. His free throw rate was 57th in the nation, was third in Big Ten play at over 50. I think that's really strong. We talked about a little about the free throw shooting. I think there were stretches where he shot it really well from the free throw line, stretches where he struggled. And then, the other is just overall field goal percentage. He was 56.6% on twos, which is strong. That dropped off fairly dramatically, was 48.6 versus the Tier A competition. And that kind of leads into, how he scored his points, where he ranked well as we look at the synergy numbers. So, Coach, I'll kind of throw it to you after this. Where he was most effective was in transition, which I think speaks to the motor, running the floor, those kinds of things. Was ranked in the 84th percentile of that.
And it's worth noting, like, people knew he ran the floor, but that wasn't like something that was hyped about him coming in. And he got better at that as a freshman. This wasn't something that he made his money on in high school, scoring a lot of points in transition. He got better at that, so it's worth pointing that out.
Yeah, it was really effective at putbacks as well, which you'd expect for a guy who rebounds it so well. Good on the move, both on cuts and on pick and roll as a roll man. Is actually one of his worst, at least from a rating standpoint, was on post-ups. And so I think that part is an area of, getting a little bit stronger, knowing the physicality of the Big Ten. But, Coach, as you look at that as a potential improvement area, what stands out to you that maybe he can do differently, something that he struggled with last year? Because that was where the bulk of his possessions were used and where he was perhaps the least efficient. So how does he improve on that for year two?
He's got to continue to learn how to play angles when you're posting up, to be able to drop step and get a defender on your back, or to turn to one side, fake, and bring it back. But he's got to play angles. If you're going to be – and when he struggled against the better teams is because he couldn't just out-athlete the next guy and go up and score. He was used to doing that in high school.
Yep.
But he's got to learn to use angles to get position if he's just going to be solid in that post. You also saw Archie do a lot of cross-screening for him. You come out of the second half, and they'd always run a little thing where they'd cross-screen him just to one step out of the post, and then he'd do what I would call a Sigma move, where he would reverse pivot, face the defender, sweep and go, and dunk on the baseline. So that's on the move. And Archie used him on that, as well as the pick and roll, because he wasn't as great there, but he needs to get better if he's going to play a lot of that 5 at getting angles and getting prepared before the ball comes to him by getting an advantage instead of just catching and then making a move. Deron Davis used to do that, where you pound the ball, spider dribble 8 times to get a shot. That's hard to do at times unless you're just brute strength. So he's got to get better angles, and then he's got to get a right hand. I think a lot of times he was so comfortable going to the left that he might have had post moves going to the right, and we don't have the stats on right, left, but I would imagine that when he made a move to the right, he wasn't as comfortable early on in that freshman year. But for me, post play is about angles.
The other thing he's got to get better at, Coach, is the double team. Is getting out of – now, he could pass out of the double team sometimes, but it's not about that. It's about recognizing the double team before it comes, or when it's starting to come, and you can either make your move quickly or get it out and get the defense on its heels, get the ball back, maybe make the guy who's going to double you run a little bit. So he's not there as quick. He got doubled a lot against the better teams we played because Indiana wasn't knocking down threes. And so, the bigger teams doubled him more. The better teams, I should say, doubled him more.
His best move was a quick spin. When a guy's right behind you, his best move was a quick spin. When he tried to go through someone or up over someone, if he has more athletic or he has more size, he was very successful. But against some of the bigger, stronger guys in the Big Ten, that's where those numbers dropped. And it's also a credit to the coaching staff that you moved him in certain places. And that's where Joey Brunk got a lot of that low post action at sometimes, and Trayce got the action somewhere else. The other area where I think he's going to have to improve, especially if he has NBA considerations, he's going to have to hit a jump shot. At his size, he's going to probably have to play more of a 4 in the NBA than a back-to-the-basket center. Those are almost gone in the NBA. So he's got to stretch out, and I hope this year it's at least to 12 to 15 feet.
It's got to be
shoot 100 threes, and then you maybe develop that later, depending on where he goes, if it's after next year to the NBA or maybe hopefully a third year. But, I think that's the next thing that you'll see is some pick and pops to 12 or 15 feet. And if he can knock down that jumper, Jared always says, look at the free throw percentage to see if a guy can shoot. I think he's got okay form, maybe some corrections, with the higher follow through or some things if you wanted to nitpick a little bit on him. But 68.5 from a post player is not too far off from being able to shoot some shots from appropriate distance.
What I'd say is his shot flattens out a bit from the free throw line sometimes when his legs get tired. He sort of, instead of just flowing through his shot, he gets to the top and pauses and then fires. And that happens on his jumper a lot too. It's a jump and kind of wait and let it go. And if he can iron that out and make it more of a smooth one motion thing, I think he'll be fine. But the shot comes in very flat. Now, he made some later in the season last year from deep, and it was kind of like, oh, where'd that come from? But the form still wasn't great. It was going in and he got the timing right, but the form wasn't great. And form is what leads to consistency. You can time a shot no matter how badly you shoot it. You can time a shot to go in. The form is what breeds consistency, and so he'll need to work on that.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at was able to look on Synergy for a few of the numbers of things that you guys talked about. Coach, you talked about post-ups, which way he turns. Definitely turns to that right shoulder so he can get shots off with his left hand on the vast majority. And there was a huge difference on they break it out by left block, right block. He was more apt to turn to that shoulder on both sides. But from the left block, there was a huge gap in how efficient he actually was in those scenarios. So I think just being able to
makes sense, right?
Know that they're going to, know that people are going to game plan for that and be able to sit on that and make some adjustments either with, spins, drop steps, what you talked about there. Some of the encouraging numbers, though, from a double team standpoint, these were, again, it's up for debate how some of this stuff gets categorized, but these are pretty good numbers either way. So as I said, the way it had it was during pass out situations, where the defense commits, he was in the 68th percentile, which rates is very good. And during trapping situations with a hard double, he was in the 90th percentile. So I think those things are good. He did not turn the ball over a lot. The turnover rate was
good.
Was strong. So I think that's good. And really where you look, you talked about spot ups. He didn't have a lot of possessions that way. That one rates out relatively poorly because maybe they're just pitching him the ball late in the shot clock. He's trying to having to make shots. So I think being able to be more varied in his post moves will be good. And I think spacing helps a lot as well. He was really effective as the roll man in pick and roll situations, but that was not something a lot of possessions got charted at. And I think some of that is because of the spacing. I think that the double team becomes easier with the spacing, and so a lot of those things as we talk about those, just it underscores trying to create other opportunities for him to score and do what he does best.
Yeah, out of doubles, he didn't really fail much. Like, as you said, the turnover numbers were low and things like that. It just didn't seem quick enough. He was more taking his time to figure out the right deal. And when you do that, sometimes you give up a scoring opportunity. So and you might get the ball out to the right guy or whatever, but the defense has time to recover. So it's about making those quick, instinctive decisions. Now, again, he was a freshman. You don't expect him to have all this down yet. The instinctive stuff and the reading the defenses. They're going to throw more complicated defenses at you in the Big Ten than they do in high school. So a lot of what he did, if you nitpick, we're nitpicking here because he was a freshman, but this kid can play and he knows what he's doing on a court. It's just a matter of getting the reps and getting better and working on the little things.
So I want to talk defense briefly because this actually surprised me as I looked at the numbers. The numbers in almost every case offensively rate out pretty well. At the same time, the defensive numbers on Synergy do not. And I think, Ryan, to your point, the block numbers look really good, and he was able to do some of those things on the weak side. But overall, he was in the 16th percentile defensively. And really, as you look down the list, spot ups wasn't very good. Post ups struggled, was in the 32nd percentile. Pick and roll, guarding the roll man was 28th percentile. Isolation was in the 3rd percentile. And so some of this I don't really know. When you look at half-court defense, was really bad against jump shooters, bad against catch-and-shoot situations. I don't know how much of that was him playing the 4 and just being mismatched in different situations. I tend to think, based on how the numbers show up, about essentially having to close out on guys who are shooting more from the perimeter.
Yeah.
The post-up numbers weren't great. I think some of that was potentially trying not to foul. A lot of explanations for that, but
especially
Coach,
later in the season when they needed him more, you could tell he was trying not to foul. There's an eye test that has to be matched with the defensive statistics, in my opinion,
Yeah.
more than the offensive ones, because defense is played as a team, and he got hung out to dry on guys a lot because of the bad switching.
Yeah, so I think that So I'm curious, Coach.
Bad rotations. I mean.
Yeah, I'm curious, Coach, to what your thoughts are when you try to kind of do what Ryan's describing. You're trying to mesh the eye test with the numbers that almost across the board don't rate out that good, except for the block numbers. I mean, how do you kind of reconcile those based on how he played and what you saw?
First of all, I think he had trouble guarding out on the perimeter. His closeouts were long and weren't choppy, and so he's going to get
never
driven.
Had to do it before.
Yeah, never had to do it. That's the big point. In high school, he was just down playing one-man zone times, when you're 6'9" and can block shots. I think he had trouble moving laterally against guys trying to drive the paint. And on the block, it's probably just strength and understanding, again, positioning and angles. He probably got pinned a lot of times by really good post players that knew how to get him in a disadvantage and then use it to his advantage. With another year, those things will get better. But the eye test part of it is fascinating because he was somewhat of a rim protector. And that can, that helps when a guy's being driven or a teammate's gotten beaten. You got a guy who can come and swat shots. And then also the rebounding part of it is a key part of defense too. A defensive possession doesn't end until the ball is rebounded. And if you have a guy who has a knack for going and getting the rebounds, that helps. So, but he's a big presence. And then the last thing about the eye test is the kid played hard. I mean, it's what Indiana fans have been longing for with Archie Miller teams, is to get those, tough-nosed guys in. Well, Trayce Jackson-Davis is an Archie guy, and he played hard. So what we ask our guys to do, if you're gonna mess up, do it hard, and then recover hard. If you screw up a closeout or your guy gets driven, but you can go up and block a shot, that's good too. And I know those numbers count successful baskets against him in those situations, but you also have plus minus too. You're gonna play a player like Trayce Jackson-Davis if he struggles and gives up some points defensively, because he's getting a lot, as long as he's getting more points offensively. But his athleticism helps, his hustle helps. Those things will overcome some deficiencies in technique that he will get better at as he plays in his second year.
And what's unquantifiable is how many points he wiped off the board from guys being concerned about getting their shot blocked when they drove in.
Yeah,
and it's unquantifiable. You never know. But he certainly was a guy who, drivers were aware of when they were in the paint.
Yeah, so Ryan, as we kind of wrap this up and look ahead to next season, what are your baseline expectations for Trayce? Doesn't have to be statistical, whether that's areas that you want to really see him improve in. What are your expectations going into his sophomore season?
I think he's got to finish better around the rim consistently. I think that as Coach said, he's got to start using that right hand more, because teams are going to overplay the left. I want to see him become a little bit of a better ball handler and passer. I'm not saying bring the ball up, but handle the ball in the half court offense. And as far as being a defender, I want guys to not be able to go one-on-one on him. When guys get the ball in the block on him and look over their shoulder and see it's Trayce, I want them to get rid of the ball. So it's more of gaining strength. We talked about that last year a little bit. He got muscled by some guys, because he's a little bit smaller if he's playing the 5. and just be able to move a little bit better laterally and close out on guys, because I think he'll play the foursome as well this year. I think if he and Race Thompson are on the floor, you might see Trayce playing defensively, playing the 4, and Race playing the 5, because Race has a better base on him, and we saw Race defend some 5s, late in the season and do really well. That freed Trayce up to do some other things. So I think, and it kept Trayce from fouling as well. It keeps him out of the shooting gallery of fouling inside. So just a few things to clean up. I mean, and just the natural progression of maybe being able to shoot it from a little bit deeper and getting stronger and all those things. But I expect him to be an all Big Ten caliber guy. Clearly. I mean, he was third team as a freshman. I think he's going to be first team this year.
Coach, what about you? What are you looking forward to with his sophomore season?
I think you'll see a slight increase in points, up to 15, 16 points per game, and maybe more depending on what's needed. His rebounding will be there. And I would like to see him be able, on offensive side, be able to shoot 12, 15-footers and add that to his arsenal, as well as what Ryan said about, the right side and finishing at the rim. But the biggest improvement has to come defensively. If he's going to have to play some 4 in that, that'll help Indiana if he can limit the points scored, by the guy he's guarding and still be that rebounder and shot blocker. So there's areas to improve, but he's going to be the leader of the team. He's going to be the go-to guy offensively. He also needs to be somewhat of a go-to guy defensively as well and be that overall leader for Indiana to be as successful as we'd like them to be.
All right, well, coming up in our third segment, we'll answer your questions, including one about Big Ten rivalries and another from Jared that was submitted in absentia. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right.
We got some questions about Jared. Just let everyone know. Jared's great. He'll be back soon.
He's just got some family things that he's
and it's nothing bad. Like, it's all good. It's just,
Yeah. We haven't gotten rid of him. We haven't staged any kind of coup or anything.
He hasn't broken.
Believe me, nobody wants no different than the comments about sports. Nobody wants Jared to be able to host the show more than Coach and I. So
yeah, I don't really care who hosts.
Yeah, Ryan doesn't care because his role is unchanged regardless. But nothing.
He'll be
nothing
back.
wrong.
He
nothing bad.
He hasn't started a spin-off. They
Yeah.
didn't roll him off into his own thing.
No.
No, he'll be back very soon.
Everything's all good.
No, we've kind of encouraged him to take some time off. He does so much for this show and the community and the online presence and all of that behind the scenes that I don't even yet understand.
Nope.
I do understand when I started hosting the show what kind of work that he puts in to bring this content to everyone. So, but we encouraged him to take some time, and he'll be back, and Andy and I will be drinking beer during these segments instead of having multiple windows open.
Absolutely.
I've just got the one, guys. It's great.
Just the one? Yeah, I've just got the 7. It's good.
I showed my wife the other day how I had to get ready for, I think it was the time I did the Banner Monday with Mike DeCourcy, and she just looked at me and her mouth was open. She's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, it's gotten better.
Yeah.
But it's quite the thing. So, yeah, Jared's fine.
All right, so I think we have 5 minutes and 36 seconds left, but let me attempt to confirm that via math. 50.
Glad you're the math guy.
Yeah, well, do my best.
We've got a mediocre question from Jay incoming.
Oh, do we?
I'm excited.
What is he submitting them during the show now?
I don't know. It's in our question thing.
No, there's not.
I think that was just left over.
No, that's he had it in case we have one.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen one, but I admittedly have
I
not had
misread
time
that.
to look. So no, I don't think
it's the
we
question below where it says Jay Hoare. I get it.
Okay.
So
I think
no mediocre question.
I don't believe so. Oops.
Undo
that. The old undo. I was going to attempt to move that question up because I thought we'd hit that one first.
I like the first one.
What will any college sports actually be played? Or
let's just. I mean, it could be a quick we'll just handicap it.
I might save that one for the end.
Okay. Okay.
We'll do
just a quick
that one,
yes.
That one
no
can be
guess.
one we can throw in because we kind of hit. Oops! I just cut that and pasted it back exactly.
By the way, to everybody
where it already
enjoying,
was. So
to everybody enjoying on the chat, this hair, like the craziness, I think it might be going away tomorrow. I'm going to try.
I mean, are there actually people who are alleging that they're enjoying it?
No, God,
Okay.
no. I was being sarcastic.
So yeah, we'll hit that question from Patrick first. We'll do Jared's, and then we'll do the last one at the end. Yeah,
By the
it's
way,
looking.
somebody-
It's really a good look.
Thanks, buddy.
It really looks nice.
It's just when I wake up in the morning, like this is after I showered today and I've whatever. When I wake up in the morning, it's like, but somebody asked in the chat, he said, what's Assembly Call going to do if there's no basketball this year? I'm like, I don't know. It'd be really weird if our 10th season was axed out by. We're like planning
We're gonna have to get
things for year number 10, and
we're gonna get hardcore into rewatching old games. I would guess at that point to do any kind of post game shows. I don't know. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's just hope it doesn't come to that. So, all right, we'll fire in. We got like 5.5 minutes. So I'll give you guys updates in the chat. So for the questions that we do hit, try to be brief. The first one will be pretty easy to be brief, and we'll go from there. All right.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Thank you, Jordan, and welcome back to the Assembly Call. Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And remember, you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU News Roundup, even during the offseason, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. Time now for our weekly mailbag. All questions submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can find out more about at assemblycall.com/community. And the first question that we have comes to us from Patrick. His question: imagine if the Big Ten decides to shake up conference rivalries and removed Purdue and Michigan State from our schedule for the next 5 years. Which team would you want to start a new or renewed rivalry within the league? Ryan, I'll throw that to you first.
Oh, geez. I would say Wisconsin, but we rarely beat them. So
I'm not sure that qualifies under the guise of rivalry, but all right.
I mean, just a team that I have an intense desire to beat every year. I think Indiana, Michigan's a classic, Big Ten matchup. It's just two, classic Big Ten schools. That'd be fun, right?
Coach, how about you?
I think Illinois is sitting there as
That's
a close
true.
rivalry. And the other would maybe be Ohio State, again, for the proximity. That's where you would go if Michigan State and Purdue were removed from discussion.
I think Illinois.
Coach
I think Illinois is the answer. Yeah.
Coach is reading my mind because I think back to, and I guess a lot of it harkens back to kind of the heyday of mine with IU basketball and those late '80s, early '90s. Like those were always really intense games with them. And I'd go with those two. I think Michigan was the other team I thought of, but the first two that popped to mind were Illinois and Ohio State for me.
Nick Anderson shot.
I mean,
why do you have to bring that up?
Coach?
What do you know better?
That's why I want to play Illinois to get them back.
Coach burned through his optimism so early in the show, and now he's throwing out Nick Anderson. That's ridiculous. All right.
When I think Big Ten, though, like when I think of the Big Ten, growing up in Southern California, and I imagine like when I'm thinking of the Big Ten, Indiana and Michigan were two of the front teams, just because they were always good and they were always intense, and then whenever they played each other, it was always a good game. So that's why Michigan came to mind for me.
Yeah. All right. So next question from Jared. Coach, I'm going to throw this to you first, so I'll give you a minute to think about it. What is your lineup, and what offensive set would you draw up for this scenario? I don't know that you necessarily need to do the lineup, but we're on the road in a Big Ten game, down to 20 seconds to go, our ball at half court, and Trayce has fouled out. So, Coach, what do you do in that scenario?
I'm putting the ball into the best point guard at the time. That might be Rob. It might be the quicker Lander to make something happen. I want to go north-south off of a pick and roll, either go off the pick and roll or what I call a reject. You fake taking it off the pick and you go opposite the pick, and you have shooters spotting up and you have a guy diving to the rim. That would be my quick set without Trayce in the game.
Quick answer. You give the ball to Christian Lander, have him go north-south. You set a ball screen, at the top of the key, let him go straight to the hoop and kick out, and you have 4 guys on the perimeter, and you let him find it. And you're down 2 on the road, you shoot that 3 and win that game. That's what I'm calling. You
Absolutely.
put your 4 best shooters on the floor. Christian Lander goes north-south. Everybody draws in. He finds the right guy. 3-pointers coming in. You're making it.
All right, who do you want taking that 3-point shot, Ryan, in your scenario?
Whoever's open. No, I would say Jerome Hunter, Al Durham, and Rob Finney are your top 3 candidates for that. However you want to arrange them. But I mean, Hunter
pick and pop with Race for the win on
Race
the road.
Is the guy. So here's the thing: Race sets
on a
the
pick
screen,
and pop.
Race sets the screen at the top of the screen and pops while Lander drives in. If he comes with a double, boom, Race is wide open, straight on 3-pointer.
There you go. All right.
I thought this through.
We've sorted it all out. It's all right there. All right, so last question. We got a little bit less than a minute left. So just give me the odds. Jared put this question in under the name everyone. Will any college sports actually be played in the year 2020? Ryan, what chance do you give college sports of happening in any capacity in 2020?
About 60%, and the only reason is because of the money. Logically, none. But the money, 60%.
All right, Coach, we got about 30 seconds, so feel free to explore the studio space in that time.
I'm going 50-50, and I think it's going to be delayed. You'll see college sports in January, February after this gets taken care of.
Yeah, I'd probably set it, I don't know. Ryan, would you say 60-40? I might say 40-60 on the other side of that they get played. I don't want to feel worse as we go along, but I feel like I do feel worse as more things happen. And so I definitely hope that I am wrong based on what we had talked about earlier. But that will do it for tonight's episode of the show, and we appreciate everybody joining us. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing most of the music you heard on the show, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next Thursday night. Until then,
take it from me, Yogi Ferrell. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
All righty.
Hey, so the AJ Moye drop, by the way, or the cameo or whatever, is one of my new favorites. I wanted to ask this, but we were into Trayce, obviously. Where were you guys when that happened, when that block happened? Do you remember where you were watching?
I was at my apartment in Cincinnati. I don't think I had a house.
You were already out of school by then, huh?
Yeah, I'm old, man.
2002?
I was teaching and coaching in Wabash. Watching it in my house.
It was 2002
with my kids.
Yeah, it was 2002.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was 2 years out of school. So yeah, I was at my apartment. It was funny though because I
knew you were right around then for graduation, but
I worked with a bunch of Kentucky fans, and so I came in to work the following day, and it was like I had played in the game. They were all so excited that Duke had lost, and they were like, "Oh, congratulations!" I was like, "Well, I didn't suit up, but it was it was good." I got into a superstition during that I think for every set of 2 games, I kind of watched the game in the same place for the first, and I wore the same shirt for one versus the other to that. So I think that's why I was home at the time. But it was that's where I was.
Yeah,
Here's a great story.
Go ahead.
About my kids. I started introducing them to filling out a bracket, and my youngest was 2002, so he was 6 or 7. He picked Butler because it had the word "butt" in it. It was that kind of bracket selection. But my oldest, and they both loved IU. My oldest picked Indiana to go all the way. And Dad, being a coach, of course, Indiana's good, but they're not going to get by Duke. I'm trying to win the family pool. We all jumped up and were screaming and yelling when Indiana won, and then all of a sudden it hit my 8-year-old son. He goes, "I got him in the bracket. I'm better than everybody." He was just running around the house even more jubilant because he had picked Indiana to win and his bracket advanced.
So I was working at a restaurant. It was a sports bar. I don't think I was bartending that night. I think I was serving, and the whole place stopped for the last 5 minutes of that game. Like, there were people who didn't get their drinks, their food, like whatever, but they were fine because they were all turned watching all the, and it was on every TV in the place. And Duke, of course, was expected to win that whole thing. I will never forget that block. Like, I was staring at the TV, and, I didn't go to IU yet. I enrolled in 0304. So the fall of 03. So I was 2 years away from going, but I knew that I was probably going to wind up going to IU. And it was crazy, like just crazy to watch an entire bar cheer for a team that wasn't local just because everybody hated Duke. The place exploded when Williams missed that free throw. Like, it just exploded. It was amazing. So that's where I was.
There you go.
All right, I got to go have dinner.
All right. Yeah, we were a little longer than normal when I host, since we had that lengthier discussion between those first couple of segments, but that's all right.
Real quick, there's some question about our ball screen stuff. The reason I've changed over the years, traditionally I never liked, the Bob Knight philosophy, never bring a defender to the ball in a ball screen, but the game has changed so much. And what I like about it is if you have a point guard that can handle a trap or a hard hedge, when two guys come out, you are now have 4-on-3. And if anytime you can get the defense at a disadvantage and in rotation, you have a better chance of scoring. And so that's where the game's gone to. And when you have a guy like Lander who's, quick as lightning and can really force double teams, then we got 4-on-3, and I like my chances with 20 seconds. And then at the end, do you call a timeout to make that happen? At 20 seconds, I probably do. There are times when I wouldn't call a timeout and just let the team come because I don't want the defense set.
Yeah, you get later in kind of a scramble situation, yeah.
What I would do is I would throw it to Lander in the backcourt and let him get a full head of steam before you bring the guy out, the screener out, and just have it be a rub kind of thing. Not a full screen where you stop and then screen off it. Like, just kind of get in the way and make the defender make a choice. So that's where I'm at. All right, guys, I got to eat.
All right, cool. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll
see you guys.
Be back
Thanks, Chat Mob.
next Thursday. Thank you, guys, and everybody stay safe, and we'll talk in a week.